Hello everyone. I am V.V.Gopala, Assistant Professor, Department of Computer Applications, Aditya University. Today I am going to tell you about a topic that is domain name system, which is shortly called as DNS. So before going to the topic, after completion of the actual topic, so we are planning to say to the students what they are actually be familiar after completion of this. In that, the first one is called introduction about DNS. You will be able to know, and also what are the services that can be provided by DNS, and followed by DNS hierarchy. What is the structure really it is going to follow, and then followed by types of DNS queries, and finally security issues in the DNS. So this is the plan what actually we are having today in this topic. Okay, let us move to the first one, that is called introduction to DNS. So actually what do you mean by DNS? Why we have to go for a DNS? This is a very important thing you should understand first of all. DNS is nothing but domain name system. Why it is required? Because it is very difficult for us to remember the IP addresses of the devices in the network, because lakhs of or crores of addresses will be there in the overall scenario. It is very difficult for you to remember the IP address by number. So instead of that, so we can able to follow the alternative way, that is called, you can call the system by its name. That means what is the specific area you are interested. So based on that, you can call the system so that the system can able to provide the resources what actually you are putting to the server. So that is why domain name system is a hierarchical and distributed naming that translates human readable domain names. For example, you know that www.google.com. So how many of you know about the IP address of www.google.com? Generally, we never represent the IP address. Generally, we go with the name that is called www.google.com. So this is the name what we are using is called as a domain name system. It is a domain name, and this system is meant for us to follow very easily to go for a server, and you can able to get the resources from it. So that is the main idea of DNS. I hope you are clear about actually the importance of domain name system here. Now coming to the other point of DNS, where you are finding this DNS and its operations. Suppose if you see the application layer in the overall the TCP IP or whatever the other systems you have models, that means OSI model is there and TCP IP is there, but whereas the DNS you can able to identify in a layer that is called application layer, which is meant for interacting with the internet, because you know that number of times we are familiar that internet is nothing but network of different networks. So it's an architecture, so that we have to see the role of DNS from the starting from the application layer. Okay, coming to the second point, that is called what are the services we can expect from the DNS. The first one is called as name resolution. That means if you give a name specific to the requirement what you have, based on the name, the corresponding IP address will be resolved by the system internally. So that is a very primary service which can expected by the DNS. So that is why that particular aspect is called as name resolution. Hope you are clear that if you give www.google.com, so it will automatically change that into its respective IP address, and thereby it is going to carry the request to the server and get the information from that. And next is called host aliasing. Sometimes a specific server may have more than one name to call it. So that in that case, some may call it as A, some may call it as B, some may call it as C. But whatever it is, all A, B, C are representing the same server, so that the DNS is going to resolve. So whether A or B or C, but they are all reflecting the same thing of as a single server. So this is the job of identifying the exact server, even if you call by different names. That is called host aliasing. The third one is called as the mail server address resolution. So in this case of mail server address resolution, so if you give some kind of a mail address, for example, everyone nowadays is having mail addresses, but mail address doesn't respect doesn't actually reflect the system name. So simply mail address is an ID that is given to a person based on their creation of having some kind of mail exchanges. So in that case, how the system is able to exactly locate the actual server or the system which is addressed by some kind of mail ID. So in that case, the DNS is responsible to resolve the actual the mail ID that is given by the user into its respective IP address. So this factor is referred as mail server address resolution. And coming to the next point, that is called load balancing. This is another important thing which is actually governed by the DNS. Load balancing is very important because if the actual medium is loaded with or beyond the limit of the capacity, suppose if you give more and more tasks to the actual in the network, so automatically, so there may be so many problems you may go to face. So that is why load balancing is another important aspect of or the service you can expect it from the DNS. And finally, there is one more thing that is called reverse DNS lookup. That means, suppose you are familiar about a IP address. Suppose if you give an IP address, then automatically the system is going to give you the host name for which host name that IP address is given. So that is in a reverse way you can able to find out, and the reverse way it can be able to actually worked out and by the DNS, and it is going to give you the IP to the host name that is actually resolved in the actual network. So these are the various factors which are actually called as services which we can actually expected from the DNS. Then you may have a question, how the DNS is able to do the job. So is it in a single level of hierarchy, or to you the figure on the screen you are able to find out three levels of servers are available, and these three levels can be designated as a root level DNS server, and the top level DNS server, and authoritative DNS server. So these are various DNS servers, even though they are all DNS servers, but their role is different. Suppose in the root level DNS server, it is actually responsible to find out under it, it can able to accommodate a number of top level DNS servers, and any question or any query or any request is made by any user, so it is going to be checked in the top level servers, which server is responsible to provide the services. So definitely the root server is going to carry the request to that server, and from there it is again going to the specific area where the user is interested to get the information. So in that case it is going to meet the authoritative level of DNS servers, so that finally the user, once they are putting a request, they are able to get the response by visiting all the respective servers in the hierarchy. I hope you are clear about why the hierarchy is in a level wise way it is mentioned, and what is the role of each and every server. In later session, in the later slides, we are going to see more detail about how it is going to work out. Now the other thing is called as the types of DNS queries. DNS is a query oriented kind of a section. Why it is called as a query? Because once you put any question and you are expecting any answer, it can be referred as a query here. So in this case of the DNS is mostly actually depending on a question based and an answer based kind of a concept. So that is why the DNS queries can be classified into two. One is called as a recursive query, and the other one, okay, you can see in the next slide, that is called the other query is called iterative query. So okay, we will see one by one what is a recursive query, and for what reason we are actually, or when we actually are going to recommend for this recursive query. Suppose the DNS client asks the resolver to find the exact IP address, so then automatically the recursive query is coming into the picture. The DNS client asks the resolver to find the exact IP address. So how it is going to find out the exact IP address of a resolver? So here you can see this the figure. Suppose you are finding various actors. One is called the requesting host, other one is called local DNS server, and the other one is root DNS server, and the other side you are finding TLD DNS server and authoritative DNS server. Okay, but whatever it is, you are finding different names. But if you see the numbering that is shown in the slide, so you can very clear about how it is going to work out. So this particular scenario you are expecting in the recursive query. So recursive query means what? The job that is started will be actually carried out at every level to server. So in this case of the numbering, if you see, so let us consider that start from 1. So the requesting host is putting a request, and that request will be carried to the local DNS server, which is at the higher level, and the local DNS server is going to meet. So the root DNS server, once the resources are not available in that local DNS server, it is going to meet the root DNS server, so that the root DNS server, if you follow the point number 3, so it is again going to the other side of the servers where the top level DNS servers are available, so that it is going to check where exactly the resources are available based on the request made by the client. So that once if you move to the TLD DNS server, it is going to meet the other DNS server which is there in the bottom level, that is called authoritative DNS server, where the exact resources are available which are actually expected by the user. So that again, after noticing the resources available at the authoritative DNS server, now you can reversely go to the request made by the host by following the point number 5, 6, 7 and 8, and finally it is going to reach the client from where the request is initially made. So this is the way how the recursive query is going to act in an intelligent way, so that the client is able to finally get the response from some server. We don't know from where we are getting, but it is the job of the DNS so to provide you the actual answer to the question which is made by the actual host or a client here. So now there is one more kind of query you are expecting, that is called iterative query. Iterative query is one more thing that is a slight difference between the recursive query and iterative query here. So in the iterative query, the same kind of question or a query is put in front of all servers at a stretch. Instead of calling one by one, so you put the question or the query in front of all the other servers, so that any server which is actually having the resources immediately respond, and finally the client is able to get the corresponding answer from some client, from some DNS server. So we don't know from where we are getting, but if you see the figure, you see that from point number 1, if you start, the request is made by one host and it is carried to the local DNS server. So the client is not having the chance of calling directly the root DNS server, TLD server or authoritative server. So the client has the opportunity to meet the local DNS server. So the local DNS server is responsible to put the problem in front of all the different types of DNS servers, so that some server will automatically give you the response because of resources available at its end, so that it is going to give the response. So it may be, the response may be by following 2-3 steps, or by following 4-5 steps, or by following 6-7 steps, but ultimately the client at the 8th step is able to get the response by getting the information from any of the servers which are actually situated in the total hierarchy. So this is the way how the query process is carried out in two ways. One is called as recursive query, other one is called iterative query. So depending on the way the DNS is actually architecture is situated or it is actually created, so the way it is going to follow to give the answer based on the question. And of course, there is the thing that we are going to find out, that is called security issues, because DNS is an open system, so that we have to be very careful about the information, because resources are more and more powerful. So once you lose the resources, automatically you lose your importance. So that is why. So you must be very careful about the security issues which are actually possible in the DNS. So these are actually classified one by one. One is DNS spoofing. So what actually the spoofing means? The spoofing is nothing but some hacker or some attacker may grab your address, and they may misuse the address, and by it may the attacker may actually do some kind of malicious acts on the website, or they may damage the resources which are available in the actual the IP. So that this is a very dangerous problem, you can say that. So we have to protect our system from this kind of spoofing attack. So how it is possible? Because somebody is entering in our premises and they are damaging our resources, we should not keep quiet. So there are some measures we have to consider. In that case, we have to follow some extra security actions are necessary. So in that we have to see that DNS SEC is a DNS security extension is to be incorporated, so that it is going to take care of the actual the spoofing kind of an attack. Thereby it is going to give you some kind of the signing or logging login kind of window is to be extended, instead of going for a normal direct visit of the system. So now we are going to ask the user to put their credentials, so that once the credentials are valid, then only we are allowing the request into the actual server, so that we are going to serve the client here. So and after that, the other attack is called as DDoS, that is called distributed denial of service. You can completely say about DDoS. And here in this case, flooding is taken place by the actual attacker. Means flooding means what? Continuously the attacker is going to send messages without any reason, so that your regular work will be disturbed because of that. So this is a very dangerous kind of an attack. We can call it as a DDoS attack. So how to overcome this? So the solution is that better you request the load balancing concept in this case, so that the load balancing service already we mentioned that in the initial slide itself. The load balance is going to take care of this kind of DDoS attack, so that it will never find any overloading or any kind of memory memory is completed or memory full kind of things you will not find, because load balancing is going to take care of this kind of an attack. So that DDoS can be possible, but it can be resolved by using a load balancing kind of a solution. The other one is called as privacy issues in DNS. So the DNS query is not encrypted. So it is a open message, open text message, so that anybody can able to see and understand, and they may copy it, or they may actually do some kind of damage to the exact message. So that we have to go for a security kind of an thing. If you want to incorporate, instead of directly putting the message, better you can take the help of HTTPS. That means hypertext transmission control protocol. That means it is a protocol. Here the S is stands for S, actually meant for security aspect. Okay. So in this case of the DNS over HTTPS, you can transmit the message or a request or a response in terms of encryption. So encryption is another way how the readable text will be converted into unreadable format. So even if any attacker is able to see that, but they cannot understand what the exact meaning of the message, so thereby you can able to say that the message is protected. So thereby you can say that privacy issue is there in the DNS, but it can be resolved by using HTTPS. So these are the various security issues and how they can be resolved. And of course, after this, I can say that after the lesson, I hope that student is familiar about what actually the introduction of DNS and how the services are classified in the DNS, DNS hierarchy, how it is actually architectured, and what are the types of queries you can expect, and finally, what are the security issues are available and how you can able to resolve them, what are the basic solutions are possible. So I hope you are clear about in this session. Thank you.